All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the 1883 Speaker Series. My name is Mike Wozniak, and I serve as the Coordinator of Leadership and Programming in the Student Involvement and Parent Programs Office. In the next 18 minutes and 83 seconds, we will learn a new lesson on leadership, as well as some advice to guide our personal and professional development. For today's speaker, please join me in welcoming our 2024 Young Alumni Award winner and a Senior Associate in Tribal Subject Matter Expert at K.L. Scott & Associates, Erica Thunder.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope the sound is all right. It sounds okay? Perfect. I'm so happy to see everyone here. And I was telling my husband, too, I don't know if I'm going to get through this without getting a little bit emotional, just because, it's so nice to be back, and it's just such a good feeling. So anyway, the intro was already given. My name is Erica Thunder. When I was here, I was still Erica Wondrosik. My husband, Dash Thunder, is here, too. He's an alumni as well, so I thank him for being here. And I did a little bit of homework. I watched a few of these beforehand, and of course, I've given speeches before and talked about leadership and things like that, but I just felt like this time was a little bit different because UND is so special to me. When I was here for 7 years, 4 for undergrad and then 3 for law school, it felt very peaceful. And I don't really know that amount of time in my life that I can say the same thing. I felt very safe here. I know in my article that I did for the interview, I had been coming off the death of my father in high school. A lot of different things had happened. And I was just looking for somewhere to feel safe, feel like I could explore in academia, and just feel supported overall. And that's what it was. So I just really want to say thank you with all my heart again to UND for the invitation and for everything else. I also thought about how I really wanted to start this, and I decided I don't really know if I should necessarily be saying exactly what leadership is, what personal development is, what professional development is, because it's going to look different for everyone, of course. And all I can really do is just tell my story, my lived experience, because it has not been perfect. There's been some very large ups and downs in it, and I think it might be a little bit surprising. So I guess really at the end of the day with all of this, I hope that you can take whatever you want from this. I hope there's something that's valuable from it, and as they say, just leave the rest. And I do want to start off by saying that one of, I guess, 3 of the biggest keys in my story has been listening, observation, and then actionable work. Actually doing the work, walking the walk, talking the talk, not just saying stuff, but actually doing it. So I'm going to really start right as I got out of, when I graduated from UND Law. I grew up, I'll just briefly say, I grew up in Botno, the Turtle Mountain area. That's where I consider home, but I'm an enrolled tribal citizen of MHA Nation. Some fellow tribal citizens are here today, so I want to shout them out. And also just say, after I finished up law school here, I had received both my JD and my certificate in Indian law, and I knew that my passion was Indian law. I had taken a course in undergrad from Dr. Stephen Light in Indian gaming, and it really changed my life because my grandma, Adeline Hall, had said to me, you should really consider Indian law when I was about 16, and I knew nothing about it. And I actually kind of felt like, why are you suggesting this to me? There's so many different areas of law. I didn't understand that Indian law and policy interfaces with all other law, and it just has a whole other set of complex rules that are so interesting, and it just immediately sucked me in when I listened for the first time to our Indian gaming lecture and could see there's just huge gaps in work that needed to be done and wanted to go from there. So right out of law school, I went to work for my tribal nation, MHA Nation, in the legal department. And I really thought, because we were in the middle of an oil boom and there was a lot going on at this time, that I'd be working primarily on things like property and contracts and leases and all of these things. This is what I prepared for. And actually, if you're familiar with some of our story, because of the oil boom, there were some things that came in to our nation that weren't always so great. And I instead was placed immediately on a very large caseload of child welfare cases. And I had promised myself in law school that I really wasn't going to work in family law, child welfare. Just some of it felt too close to home, and I just felt like there's no way. Like there are people better than me at this. And I would say I was completely wrong. Turned out that it was the most rewarding and satisfying area of law that I could be working in during that time. And it's continued throughout my entire career: child welfare, child care, etc. And as I walk through now, like even what all happened after that, and working directly in child welfare for my nation, I just am amazed at how we can end up in the right time, in the right spaces, around the right people, and one never knows how things are going to work out. Because for me, when I worked for my tribal nation, it was so fulfilling. I learned so incredibly much. And like I said, there was just a lot changing at once. I had kind of been approached about an opportunity at the Ho-Chunk Nation, where my husband is an enrolled tribal citizen in Wisconsin. And I thought maybe this is the next step. They were and are an amazing tribe, and I just had a lot of opportunities that I thought this is going to expand my experience a little bit further. But in between there, there was a housing crisis amongst, the lands where I was living within MHA Nation. I was living with my great aunt and uncle. My great aunt had gotten sick, and I just kind of felt like I am now in the way. So I need to figure out this pivot, and it's not happening quite yet. And so I was essentially homeless at this point, and moved to Grand Forks. Luckily, my husband let me into his humble abode, which was very humble. And everything went backwards for me. Everything regressed. This was a short time. This was about maybe 3 months or so. I wasn't working in law anymore. I didn't exactly know what the plan was. I had a little bit of experience, but I was 25, and I was watching all of my classmates on these really beautiful, like concrete interstates of law. They were clerking for these amazing judges. They were working for, private law firms who were really well-renowned, well-known, and I really didn't want to be a victim of comparing myself to that, but I could recognize they're on an interstate. I'm in the grass, maybe? There's not even a beaten path to this, this path that I'm on with Indian law and policy, because I'm also someone who was interested in eventually just moving into Indian policy and moving into more so being on the written part of law and more of the behind-the-scenes part where we can get some things done. And that's not to say anything, of course, about the practice of law. It's just where I wanted to be and where I knew my skill set was probably best. So I was here. I went to work at a hotel. I did housekeeping. I went to work at Amazon, which all was extremely humbling. But looking back at all of it, And it's funny to say this now. I know it's a little bit tricky of a subject to talk about, but specifically working for Amazon at the time felt like the best business school I could have gone to. I learned a lot there, and one of the key takeaways that I learned was about failing forward, that really there is no failure, it's only lessons at the end of the day. And if you're gonna learn a lesson, you gotta move forward with it. You know, you can't, I was kind of like, I can't stay in this place, and I know that I have more potential than this, and I want to be able to keep doing good things for other people. I dreamed of being a public servant, so I want to be of service. And I just kind of started looking at life that way as well. It was not without a lot of sadness and, you know, things like that, and tears were definitely shed, not just during this time of my career, but kind of started there. But anyway, I really appreciate that time. It humbled me immensely, and I think that it actually was one of those things where going back pushed me forward more than anything, which is another takeaway from my own story that I have to remind myself constantly. And I think about that in a number of different ways. I think about it in, you know, this metaphorical way of just, this seemed like a setback. It really wasn't at the end of the day, but it propelled me forward. And this is kind of an ebb and flow that I had throughout my career thus far. But also in the work that I've done, oftentimes, and this is why I'm so happy that there are fellow tribal citizens here today too, if we just look back at what we did and maybe how processes, you know, worked, how we worked through things, it's pretty wild how actually that worked really great, and going back made sense for something that we're doing right now and making it even better. And I've seen it. I just saw a former coworker of mine and colleague, and someone I really look up to and has been a mentor of mine. She works for DHHS of North Dakota, Department of Health and Human Services. And she was showing houses of a certain era that were built. And she was like, you know, talking about the housing crisis and all of these different things related to homelessness and things like that, and said it's really funny how now we're looking at all of these things from decades and decades and decades ago to try to model something that we can use going forward, and it's working. It's not just something that we're doing, it's actually working. So I went to work for the Ho-Chunk Nation. I served under 3 judges under the Ho-Chunk Nation Trial Court, their chief judge and 2 associate judges. It was definitely a very incredible experience, and it was something that did push me a lot. There were 3 very strong women, and my fellow staff attorney that I work with was also a very strong woman. So I feel like I was pushed in the best possible way when I look back at all of it, even on those difficult days. And once again, here I am working in employment law, labor law, human rights. I was just learning a whole new set of laws, obviously, under the sovereign nation of Ho-Chunk Nation. And because they're a non-reservation tribe, I was learning how to work with counties who had enrolled tribal citizens living within their jurisdictions or shared jurisdictions, and figuring out new ways of how we could work together that hadn't been done before. Because as some folks might know here, there can be a lot of tension between border towns, if you will, and tribal nations. And so we were working through a lot of that. And when I went to work for the Ho-Chunk Nation Department of Social Services, I just felt like everything changed once again. This was something where I remember even classmates of mine reached out to me and they were like, they hadn't known some of the things that had happened up to that point, but I remember a few saying like, is everything good? Why would you go back now to like social services and do work within that area? And they didn't know that I had worked in childcare and things like that, but I was no longer practicing law. I was boots on the ground, working and spearheading a new program within the nation and within the state of Wisconsin to assist youth and their families, and youth who had been in out-of-home placements, foster care, etc. Ho-Chunk Nation doesn't have TPR, termination of parental rights, so there was still a lot of connection to families and things like that. But the primary reason for this program was to be able to get everyone around the same table. So I had educators, I had medical providers, law enforcement, you name it. Every single meeting with the youth, the child themselves, family members, and this group, this team of people, to be able to just listen. Listen to the child, listen to the family, listen to each other, and just work out what is actually needed here. And this is what I was kind of talking about at the beginning. I needed to be able to just quietly sit and observe so much of what was going on around me, because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to make any type of actionable movement. I wasn't going to be successful in this work, which successful, of course, in child welfare and child care in general can mean a lot of different things, but of course it's for the best interest of the child at the end of the day. It was phenomenal. I took pay cuts and downgraded titles, but to this day, I still look at it as probably one of my most favorite things that I've done in my career. And I wasn't there a terribly long time, maybe about a year or so with the Ho-Chunk Nation Department of Social Services. And I got homesick, and I wanted to come home to North Dakota. And it just so happened that the North Dakota Indian Affairs Commission was hiring for a judicial systems administrator. If I'm being honest, I really didn't know a whole lot about it. I just knew that it fit. It was everything that I saw. I didn't even know the folks who were involved with this department. I just said, I'd love to apply for this. And we drove back to North Dakota. I think it was on Halloween. I was the last person to interview. We went back, my husband and I, to his truck. I bawled my eyes out because I just wanted to be home and also just feel like I'm doing something here that can be productive. This was in 2016. DAPL was at its height. There were a lot of different issues going on. I didn't know exactly how I could be helpful, but I knew that I had learned so much from all of these experiences, specifically from the Ho-Chunk Nation. I remember driving when I was offered the job, by the way, was crying, phone off. They were trying to call me to offer the job right there, and I had no idea. So I guess I don't know what the lesson is there. Keep your phone on. You don't need to cry over everything. It's going to work out somehow. You're either going to get yes or no. But my heart was just like wanting it so incredibly badly. And even just to work with my fellow tribal citizens again, that was something that I deeply, deeply missed. There's something to it, it just runs in our blood. And to move away from it is difficult. And so even though I loved working for the Ho-Chunk Nation, and I'm very, very thankful, I just wanted to be with family, and I just wanted to work on a lot of things here in this state that, of course, at the time were a little bit messy, to just like put it really bluntly. I worked with the Indian Affairs Commission, the Office of, for I think close to 3 years. And when I first came in, the Governor Burgum, hadn't officially been elected yet. He wasn't in office. I didn't know him at all. I knew that he had been, successful in the tech world and things like that. And when I first met him, it was just our small group from Indian Affairs. And one of the first things that he talked about was like issues with cross-jurisdictional gaps, whether it was law enforcement or healthcare or childcare or all of these other things. And I said, well, I have a ton of experience with creating MOUs, and we were very successful with that in Wisconsin, where, you know, relationships have ebbed and flowed there as well. And I don't know, I just feel like it was, again, one of those moments where he was listening. I was talking this time, but he was listening, observing, and seeing, taking notes, and saying to himself, what's the actionable item here? Oh, we have some things that we can do that might be able to work. Even just as far as respecting tribal nations, and I'm getting educated right now on what it means to properly consult with tribal nations, and what it means to recognize sovereignty, what it means to have a good faith government-to-government relationship. So I felt very heard, and I didn't do anything that wasn't just what I was already doing. So to be in a position where several years later I was approached about applying for the commissioner position of the North Dakota Department of Labor and Human Rights, I felt just incredibly blessed. And I know that it came from a lot of hard work, a lot of very quiet work that was behind the scenes. Again, listening, observing, and then actually taking action on things. It's kind of all a blur from there because I served, and by the way, I say this all humbly, like it still kind of blows my mind that all of this happened, but it's amazing to have folks who just believe in you, because I certainly had many instances of folks who were kind of like, well, yeah, we don't really understand the Indian law thing. You're so passionate about that. How are we going to fit you into this area? The skills, I can't say enough. You know, they continue over to whatever the work is, as long as someone's heart is there. And when I became a leader, and when I became both the Commissioner for Labor and Human Rights and then the Interim Executive Director for North Dakota Indian Affairs, I just wanted to listen to my teams. I wanted to understand what all was going on. There was a lot of things that I came into that weren't perfect at all. The things that I believe transformed everything was being able to just empower them and also work on change management. I feel like a lot of this is stuff that we think about a lot in the professional world, but I needed something, and these were analytical people. By the way, I see my time, so. I knew that these were analytical people, and I wanted to respect that. And so I said, let's just go forward. Let's try to extract as much information as possible, and let's do true business process improvement. They loved it, as it turns out, because they were very, they nerded out over it, if you will. and it worked out very well, even just for the department, to get a lot of things cleaned up, to enforce better law, to make better decisions, and just to be the best that we could be as a department. There's a lot more to say during all of this time, but as I wrapped up my time, I went over to the North Dakota Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation for work in really trying to establish more equity, since there are so many tribal citizens and that are disparately impacted, and the numbers are so high within our prison systems in North Dakota as compared to the populations of we as tribal citizens. As I wrapped up all of my time, I just realized at the end of the day, all I can do when I come anywhere, when I come to the table, whatever it is, if someone is asking me to be there, is to just be a servant leader is to always remember that a rising tide raises all ships. So whatever I'm doing, I need to be thinking of everyone else. And while I put myself last, there were some difficulties and some painful parts to that. Leadership isn't just all pretty and fun and everything else. I did get a little bit uncomfortable at times with leadership, probably because I just wanted to be able to make sure that my teams were okay. And at the end of the day, it's funny, I hear from a lot of them, but even still today, to reflect back at things that we did. But if I can say anything, I just want to say I've been very humbled in life, and I'm very glad for that. And I have nothing but just complete thanks for all of my experiences. There's too many and there's too much to really talk about in 18 minutes, 83 seconds. I, again, hope that you can take something from just this little blip of my life. And I really hope that I can continue to serve and work with UND, and I just cannot say thank you enough. Last things I'll leave with is I never regretted sitting a little bit longer in meetings. I never regretted trying to figure out why someone might be quiet in a room. I never regretted saying yes to things when I knew that there could be something that would have a tangible change to it, and even when I didn't know that. So I just want to say thank you all very much, and thank you for the time today and your patience and just your listening ears. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Erica. All right, thanks to all of you for attending. Please join us on Wednesday, October 9th, when we welcome alumnus and board chair of the UND Alumni Association and Foundation, Jim Pullman. Have a great rest of your homecoming week.